Hello, welcome to Image Bearers. My name is Otoma Edje. This is season 3, episode 1. I'm so excited. Got funding to keep this program on the air. It's self-funded, so amen. But I'm so excited today. I have on the program my sister, Louito. She's Dr. Edje, and I'm just going to go ahead and read this so I don't mess this up. But Dr. Edje is the Associate Dean of Graduate Medical Education at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. So again, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be with you tonight, Otoma.
Yes. Any way I can get some time to hang with my sister, this is awesome. So I know you're one of the 30,000 participants in the Moderna vaccine trial. And I know one of the things that's on everyone's mind right now is obviously the vaccine, next steps, kind of how it's going, all those kinds of things. And I think the other thing is safety. So I wanted to just get some time to help dispel some of the myths and rumors that are out there and hopefully give some confidence to our viewership. So first question I have for you is, I guess, first of all, I mean, it is kind of risky. You know, what made you decide to actually get involved with the Moderna trial?
So I work seeing patients and can end up wearing my personal protective equipment for 9 hours straight. I wear glasses as well. And so just even having my glasses fog up and trying to figure out how to handle that, just wearing head to toe protective gear day in, day out was really starting to get to me. But then it piqued my interest when the Moderna trial, one of the 90 sites became one of my hospitals. So it was something very exciting. It was right around the corner from my office. I figured, you know what, let me give it a try, at least look at the consent form. The biggest issue was, I knew that at some point we needed to get out of this pandemic, and I needed to be able to ask my patients to consider taking the vaccine and advise them appropriately as their physician. And to have some credibility, I felt that I would probably want my doctor to be in the trial if she was asking me to be in the trial. So that was one of the very first things that was important to me. And like I said, it was just around the corner for me, and I figured, let me just take a look at this. But it really wasn't until I had actually started to have some personal experience with a death in the family and watching sort of the bare heartache of my step siblings when my stepmother passed away, that it really jolted me into action. And I sat down, had a conversation with my husband, and told him that I really wanted to participate and be part of the solution to ending this pandemic. So we sat down. He's not a physician, and he was very particularly concerned that I didn't have any vaccine that had any virus in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we narrowed it down. So that left us with Pfizer or Moderna. Neither of the two have any vaccine that contains virus. In fact, they're both mRNA vaccines, which basically means that mRNA is like a recipe book for one of the 29 proteins that lives on the outside of the virus, the part that makes the virus infective. And so what happens with mRNA, it's the recipe book on how to make that spike protein that's wrapped in a tiny little bit of fat so it can enter your cells and be protected. And then your body recognizes it and makes weapons against it called antibodies. And those antibodies then, when they get exposed to the real virus, are able to act and dismantle it essentially. And so, as you know, there's some very specific requirements around shipping. Everything has to be frozen and so forth for the vaccine. And that's because mRNA degrades very easily, which is an important thing to know as well. It doesn't stay in your body for a long period of time. In fact, in a matter of days, that little mRNA strip is degraded and no longer exists, but the antibodies stay around. Additionally, there is a difference between the two vaccines. The Moderna vaccine can stay at room temperature for 12 hours, and it can also stay in a doctor's fridge for 28 days. That's not the case for the Pfizer vaccine. It has to be stored at -70 degrees. And so it has to be shipped at those cold temperatures as well. Then it has to be thawed and reconstituted. So for areas that are rural, it's a little bit harder to have the appropriate freezers for the Pfizer trial vaccine.
So is Moderna the one that's being used predominantly because of that in the US and around the world, or is it? I don't know
Yeah,
if you know that.
so that's a great question, Otoma. A couple of things. Number one, Pfizer did have some global obligations to different countries around the world. Moderna chose to stay as local as they potentially could here in the United States. And Pfizer also then had, they're a little bit harder to produce and to ship. And so that's the other thing that comes into play.
Okay. So I think the other thing that comes up as a question is how long the vaccine will last in a person's body.
Yes. So the vaccine, as I mentioned with mRNA, that stays in your body just for a couple of days, but it's the actual response to the mRNA that actually lasts. And the reason that I'm in the Moderna trial and continue to be in it, even though we found that the vaccine is very effective and very safe, I'm going to be in the trial for a full 25 months because I want to be able to answer that question. How long does the immunity from this vaccine actually last? And what we do know is that if a vaccine gives you immunity for at least 4 months, then it's very likely that it will last for several years. And we've already crossed that 4-month mark. So we're very hopeful that the Moderna vaccine will actually confer immunity for at least 2 years.
Okay. So I think another question that comes up is right now there's like a variant that's come up. I think it's a B117. I'm just throwing this words out like I know what I'm talking about. But what can you tell us about that? I know that came from the UK and it's in a few states right now. I guess the question specifically is, is the vaccine that people are currently getting, does that allow them to have immunity against this new variant, or, you know, what do we know right now, I guess?
So what we know is that right now it is more infectious. That variant is more infectious than SARS-CoV-2, which is the one that had been circulating earlier. We also do know, however, that it is not very different apart from that. So it's not going to be more disease producing, in fact. And when I say that, your symptoms aren't going to be any more severe or anything of that nature than they would have been had you had, SARS-CoV-2, which is the original virus that's been circulating around. We do also know that the mRNA should tackle that just as well as it would have done the same. So we expect it'll work just as well.
The second to last question I have for you is in reference to just achieving herd immunity. So my understanding is, the population needs to get vaccinated to 70%, and then herd immunity kind of takes over. And I know right now, I think the numbers I heard was we should be at 20 million in January or somewhere around there, and we're like at 2 million or somewhere in that range.
Yes.
So I guess the question is, when do you think we will achieve herd immunity, if that's possible? Because I know a lot of people have, elected not to take the vaccine. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so herd immunity, just to parse that out a little bit more, that would include immunity that's from COVID, but then immunity, from actually having the disease and being exposed. Or it can mean immunity from the vaccine. Now, one thing we do know about herd immunity, we should expect 70% of people who are in the community need to actually have immunity for the other people to be protected. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is that COVID produces immunity, but it's not reliable immunity. We do not know how long it lasts. We do not know how, whether you have the neutralizing antibodies in the post-COVID exposure immunity. And so that's why we know that you can get COVID twice. You can get COVID more than once. And so that for patients who have already had the COVID disease, you should still get immunized. And so to get to herd immunity, you would need to have the vaccine in 70% of people. And that is a really tall order. Now, I do understand that there are hesitancies, especially in Black and Latinx communities. And there's a great study done by the NAACP called the Coronavirus Vaccine Hesitancy in Black and Latinx communities. And it really has a great executive summary that has some figures in it that show why Black communities and Latinx communities are hesitant. And the fact that they're more than likely, 2 times more likely to do what their physician, their personal physician asks them to do, especially if they look just like them. So it's very important that Black and Latinx physicians go ahead and talk to their patients because they're more likely to have an impact there. We're also more disproportionately affected. In fact, 73% of Black patients, Black people in the community know somebody who has had either a hospitalization or died from the COVID, and yet only 42% say that they will go ahead and get the vaccine. From my standpoint as a physician, it really does take multiple conversations as opposed to one. There's a long railway of past that's littered with systemic racism and really bad outcomes with respect to some trials like the Tuskegee experiment that really inform some of the decisions that people are making, and just very legitimate questions about vaccines. But I will say that things have been put into place since we had some of those bad experiences, including what we call IRBs. So those are institutional review boards where you cannot administer, you can't even start a trial without stating what your intents are. You can't enroll a single person. And for example, just to give a case in point, once we found out that the Moderna trial had such wonderful results, everyone who is in the trial was given a choice to be unblinded, meaning you can decide whether you want to stay in this trial or not, because now you have a vaccine. And I actually have my unblinding visit this coming Thursday, where I can go ahead and I've decided that if I didn't get the shot in the trial, then I'll go ahead and get it. If I did get the shot, which I think I really did, because the second shot gave me what felt like a lead arm, then I'll go ahead again and stay in the study because I want to make sure that I can continue to help to answer the question, how long the immunity lasts.
You're awesome.
Thank you. You're awesome too.
So I guess I did
My
have
favorite brother, by the way.
Thank you. I did have actually a few other questions as I was kind of jotting them down, but they're quick. So
yeah.
I think another question that came up was, it seems like the perception is that this was developed quickly, that, there was talk of like it being like a year and a half, and maybe we'll have something. And then next thing you know, it's done by the end of the year. So can you help dispel or explain like how quickly it was done and just the safety that's still there, even though it's been perceived to have been done quickly?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Otoma. So coronaviruses, which is the family that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a part of, have been researched and funded by the NIH for about 20 years. And for that reason, it's almost like the cake has been baked for 20 years. And all we had to do when this came up to the forefront, the SARS-CoV-2 virus was out. It took 66 days for them to figure out what the sequence of the virus was, and then to go ahead and form the mRNA that needed to happen. And then the studies were able to be started. So it was more like this past 11 months or so was really just trying to find the icing on the cake. What is the flavor of the icing? And then had to ice the cake. So the cake had been baked for 20 years, all the ingredients perfectly planned, everything, we knew everything. In fact, when it came out, we knew we had to target and look at the surface, and we knew we had to look at one particular protein.
So it's just so I understand. So we've known about SARS for years.
Absolutely.
So that's the deal. It's just a matter of like the specifics for this variant or whatever. Okay.
Absolutely. And so this was not haphazardly put together at all. It's really unfortunate that it was called, Operation Warp Speed, because that, I think, it politicized it, and also gave it a, rushed feeling to it, but it really wasn't rushed. And I do want to point out as well and give credit where credit's due. Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett is a phenomenal 34-year-old Black woman who is one of 2 scientists that led the charge on the development of this vaccine. She's amazing. She's a genius, and she is a phenomenal person. In fact, she's a Christian, and she talks as well about how she has really reconciled being a scientist and her faith together. So it's just really interesting. If you ever get a chance to listen to some of her podcasts, I'd recommend it.
Okay, I'll probably try to get some information, put it in the show notes for people. So I think another question I have for you is, as you've been on different outlets, kind of sharing about your journey and so forth,
Yes.
what has been some of the impact in terms of people changing their mind? Let's say, for example, they were like, you know what, no, this thing's got the chip in it, 666, I'm not going to do it. And then they see you and they know that you're my sister, and they're like, oh, I guess if that's, no, I'm just kidding. But what's been some of the responses that you've heard where people have changed their mind, obviously for the good?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I've gotten several of my colleagues send me emails, people I don't even know but are here in my community saying, you know, I got your email, just wanted to let you know. I was talking to a patient today about COVID-19. She put, you know, her husband on speakerphone, and we, you know, talked about it. And she said, I heard Dr. Edje on Closing the Health Gap, which is a channel that I had been on, a local push here in town to try and get people the right information. And she said, I was very, very skeptical to do it until I heard her explain about mRNA. And now I'm very excited to get the vaccine. And she thanked me for, you know, making her job a little bit easier as a physician. And I think that it's just, we're going to have conversations. We're going to have to get out there multiple times in the community. We'll have to have people see us get vaccinated and do very well. In fact, here in Cincinnati, we have 150,000 healthcare workers, and we live in the community, we serve the community. And so when I go to the grocery store, I bump into my patients and my colleagues and coworkers, and they see me doing well. That's a testament to the fact that, guess what, we're doing well here. I think the other thing is that people are concerned about, you know, why do they want us Black folks to be at the front of the line here? And there's suspicion around that. And I got to tell you,
Like a bad horror movie.
Yeah, you're not at the front of the line. I was at the front of the line. That's why I rolled in the trial, so that you wouldn't have to be at the front of the line, so that they could find out. In fact, when I enrolled, every single time that I had 2 shots, and after every shot, I had to take my temperature. They gave me my own little thermometer. I had to take my temperature, and I had a phone app, and I had to record yes, no to 17 different symptoms. And it synced to their computer, and I got calls every week. I still do, about how I'm doing. And my next visit is in April, apart from my unblinding visit. So, you know, again,
when is your unblinding again?
Pardon me?
When is your unblinding?
Is this Thursday?
Thursday, okay.
Yeah, so that lets me know whether I got the vaccine or whether I didn't. It won't change my path at all. I'm committed to making sure that we get the most information out of this. And so again, we were the guinea pigs voluntarily. I volunteered for it so that people wouldn't have to say, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to wait and see what happens to people. Well, there are 30,000 of us who decided, let me be the people who are first in line so that you can be reassured that this is okay. And to be very specific, not a single person in the trial who got the vaccine, the Moderna trial, got severe COVID. So none of us got hospitalized, not a single person got hospitalized or died who got the vaccine. And 94.1 of us didn't get COVID at all, 0. So, you know, again, it's safe, and it was effective.
Well, that's one way to vaccinate the whole country. Just keep doing trials of 30,000 people.
There you go.
All right, so I know you've been on a few interviews. I'm sure this was your favorite one. But outside of this one, what were some of the other interviews that you've been on and different communications, just from memory, that you can think of? And which one was perhaps most interesting and exciting for you?
It's all been exciting because I think the goal is really to get the message out. And anytime I have an opportunity to do that, I'm going to do it. So it started out with it started out with an interview that was actually just a phone interview, and the print came out and it was tweeted by the American Medical Association, of which I've been a member for many, many years. I do service for my physician community at the national level, and I represent Ohio. So they did this little story. It got tweeted out, and then CNBC got a hold of it. And so Shepard Smith and the News then, called, and they wanted to do an interview, which they did. And of course, they are a part of the parent company, MSNBC. So then they shared it with MSNBC, and somehow it got to Sirius Radio. And then somebody called from Vegas and said they saw me in Vegas. And another guy, then NPR called. And so Xavier, WVXU, has a local NPR station. So all of a sudden I was in NPR. And then of course, because of that, they can go to all the national NPRs. And then Newsy, which I had not heard of, but they're a phenomenal program. They picked it up. TMZ Live picked it up, and they did a special interview as well. And there's a company out, that's a radio station actually, and TV in France, and they have 190 million listenership, France, Germany, and then Francophone Africa. And they wanted to send a reporter out from LA, and she could not get a direct flight. We didn't want her hanging out in an airport on a layover. So we did what we call B-roll, which I had no idea what B-roll was. But B-roll is, hey, we'll go ahead and film some stuff here and we'll send you it, so you don't have to be exposed to COVID trying to do this interview. So that's sort of the way it's gone. And I'm just grateful for the platform. If it saves a life, I'm right here for it. We've lost 4 family members, and I would really love to be in line with them to get their vaccine. And I don't want anyone else to regret not having gotten the vaccine. So that's what pushes me forward, trying to save lives, basically.
Mm-hmm. So what are you hoping to do as far as maybe a fun activity this year? I don't know if we're going to be through COVID this year, but I guess, what are some fun things you're hoping to do this year?
You know what? You did ask that question. I didn't get to the answer to that one. You'd asked about when I think it may be over. It really depends on how people respond and how many people get their vaccine. We've had some hesitancy, as well as, there's a whole list of different people who are, I don't know, I'm going to wait. So I'm looking at possibly 2022. I hate to say it, but like maybe February 2022. To be completely safe. And even then, it may take a little bit longer depending upon how people respond. It will definitely take more than a couple of vaccines out there for this to be covered, because the production has been much slower than we expect. As you mentioned before, we wanted to have 20 million doses in arms by the end of 2020, and we've really only gotten to 2 million, which is here in the US, which is really horribly slow compared to what we want. So what we had is this brilliant vaccine development. It's really been the allocation and distribution that has really, it needs a national platform for that to happen. And I'm hopeful that will happen in the earlier part of this year.
Good deal. Well, hopefully some of that fun, if we can have some fun this year, maybe we'll get a chance to hang out. We'll see how things work out.
I would do anything to be able to give you a nice big hug, Otoma. I really miss you, and I look forward to seeing you in person.
Definitely. Well, thanks so much for your time. Those of you that enjoyed this episode, please click like and consider subscribing for more awesome episodes. Thanks so much.